Hello and welcome to Laurie Fay Art. It's Laurie. With October fast approaching, I wanted to be prepared this year for Inktober, not like last year where it was a last minute decision. This year I will be uploading a video every day for the month of October to celebrate Inktober. Now, for this year's list, I'm following the prompt list from Chantel at Darkest Raven Designs, and I have added the link to her video containing all the information you need. Just a heads up though, there is some added incentive for you to consider this list for your prompts this year. My work this year will be ink and only ink. Last year I used watercolor and micro pens, but this year I'm just going with completely ink, and that's something I have never done before, so that should be interesting. All my designs based on the prompts will be horror based designs, and they will have a twist, but you will have to tune in to see what that is. I am now going to show you step by step how to make this journal. This journal was made specially for the Burtober prompt list that I've just talked about. All I've done to connect this is hot pressed watercolor is what I'll be using for this year, and these are just binder rings. Anyway, I'll let the video play and you can see how I made this little journal. It's A5, it's not overly big. As you can see, it's in my hands, it's not overly big, but I just thought it would be a nice way to keep my collection for this year, and I've already got it done. Last year I made the journal afterwards, but this year I have become a bit more prepared. So on with the video, and I hope you enjoy. Using some scrap cardboard from a box, I cut two rectangles a little bit bigger than A5, 15 by 22.5 centimeters. I used a double hole punch to punch in the holes. Next, I mixed PVA glue with some water. Any PVA glue will do. Brush it onto the cardboard. Sprinkle up your tissue paper, and this tissue paper was just from some Happy Mail that was laying around. Crinkle it up and just lay it onto the cardboard, and this gives the cardboard the texture you will see a bit later. Glue the edges and sides down of the tissue paper and cut off the excess bulk. Repeat this step for both pieces of cardboard. This will be your cover. Using black paint, and this is just some cheap acrylic black paint that I got from Aldi. Paint the entire surface, covering all the tissue, and don't forget the edges. Now, let's get on to the decorations. I had a couple of Barbie dolls, so I removed their head, and to remove the makeup I just used acetone. The hair is basically connected inside the head, so you can remove that by cutting it short and using tweezers or pliers to pull it out from inside. To make the head sit flat, I removed some of the bulk from the head using a knife and very carefully trimmed it down until I was happy with how it would sit. Now let's paint the faces and decorate them. First, I painted her whole face with white acrylic, and I also put a little bit of a tint of purple in with that white. And for the other face, I did use just white paint, but I did 2 coats for better coverage. Now, onto the teeth. I rolled out some clay and cut it into different sizes and then pressed down, making little shaped teeth, all different sizes. I didn't need them to be perfect, as I knew that I was going to do a horror theme, and once the teeth are done, you can pop them in the oven as per directions on your clay. I started creating the details on the dolls' faces. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to go with, so I just used acrylic for the eye sockets and then some pastel for shaping the features. Later I realised that a lot of the fiddling I did here with the dolls' faces was a bit of a waste of time, as it really doesn't show up. So I continued experimenting with markers, and I also used a little bit of colour pencil. As you can see, this process was a little fiddly, but we did get there in the end. So for this next Barbie head, I took a different approach and just went for some chalk pastel shading around the cheeks and the jawline, and just went for that creepy zombie look. As you can see, all the teeth are in front of me, and we will use those a little bit later. I wasn't happy with one of the dolls, so I decided that I would make some hair from rolling clay and putting it onto some alfoil so that I could bake it. I was worried that if I put it onto the doll's head and put the doll in the oven, she may melt. And here are all the teeth. I thought perhaps they needed a little bit of uglying up, so I used some paint to give them more of a grey look. I am now putting on the hair. First I painted it with some acrylic paint. This was purple. As you can see, I now have paint everywhere. Hey, but I'm having fun. Using super glue, or you can use quick dry glue, I attached the hair to her head and just brushed some paint underneath to hide her scalp. Now onto the book cover. I drew a little bit of a plan onto the cover to figure out where I wanted the things to go. Firstly, make sure your holes for the cover are on your left, or you're going to have an upside down book. Using tissue or paper towel or even toilet paper, start to mould where you want the high points by dipping them into PVA and water mixture. I know a lot of people use half and half, but I tend to work more with 3/4 glue and 1/4 water. I think it depends on just how watery your glue is. Continue to work in the layers. As you can see, I am making some lips and I am using the same technique. Okay, this is the part where I make an eye. There's lots of tutorials on how to make these different eyes on YouTube, but for this project I just wanted something simple and dark. To make this I just used a cabochon and I painted it black. Basically it's just a little glass button. Now that my tissue moulding is dry, I set out painting with acrylic and covering up using the black acrylic paint again. Glue on the heads with the super glue. This took a little bit to do. I just had to persevere. It's important that your tissue moulding behind where you're putting the heads is dry and that you have good contact. I then continued to add more tissue and glue moulding around the heads just to give that more streamlined effect. While I was waiting for my tissue moulding to dry, I went in with some red acrylic as I wanted to spice it up a little bit and make it a little bit more horror. So I went in with this acrylic paint and did some highlights. I just continued with the red acrylic, going over the layers and just adding bits and pieces of highlights here and there until I was happy. Now we put in the teeth. I put some super glue into a container and dipped the teeth in. By doing so, the glue had a little bit of a chance to dry and it helped it stick. Using tweezers and my fingers, I pushed them into the mouth, and the tissue, even though it was dry, was soft enough to allow them to sink in. The tissue that is behind is there to stop the teeth from sliding back, and I will remove that once the teeth have set. Now for the bottom ones. It is the same process. However, I did sort the teeth into sizes, so the bigger ones went into the middle and I worked my way from the middle out, and the fang type ones I put at the very end. I actually really enjoyed putting the teeth in. It was quite a fun process. I decided that the teeth needed still a little bit more charm, so I painted some yellow onto the teeth. It's just acrylic paint again. Using eggshell, I cracked the shell up into pieces and I glued this on. I think it looks a little bit like scales when I'm finished. What do you think? And this is the eggshell all glued on and dried. Might have got a little bit carried away. Using some of the cheap black acrylic paint that we have used throughout, paint over the eggshells and do this once the glue has dried. For the back cover, I use a bronze paint and I use my finger to cover it lightly. I do the same for the front cover. I also glue in some coffee stained paper to both inside of the covers. I am now just adding the finishing touches and covering up the last of the tissue that I could see. Just going around having a look, making sure that I've got full coverage. I wanted my prompt list easy to see, so I printed it out and glued it to both of the backs of the front cover and the back cover. Make sure that your holes for the binder rings are clear and easy so that you can pop your binder ring through. To finish it off, just cut your paper into A5 size and use a double hole punch to pop the holes through, put through your binder clips, and you're done.